If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property XPerts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Jiggins, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy.
Happy Friday. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining again if you've been with us before. And if you haven't, welcome to the channel. Ben and I, as in the feature video, are serial entrepreneurs running multiple businesses. And every week we dive into the sort of highs and lows and learnings that we've found in that week of the business. And this is not an episode to miss. And we also would like to say that all of the questions that you may ask live will get answered live. So it's a free opportunity for you to ask some questions. So if you've got any bottlenecks in your business, please do ask them live and we'll get around to them at the end. Our goal as a business and a group is to deliver 1,000 homes and £1 billion worth of property in the UK. And we do this with collaborating with entrusted investors. And we like to think we're ambitious, transparent, which is why we're on the channel, and also creative. So going into today's agenda, it's the 11th of April for podcast listeners, and we'll be starting off with when do I need to register a lease? So we're talking about if you're leasing a building to a tenant, when do you need to register that? We'll be then going on to new heating technologies. I know it's the middle of summer and it's probably the last thing on your mind. But when it comes to EPC changes and performance of buildings, you want to make sure that you're fitting the right heating systems. We'll be talking about the hot topic of Trump's tariffs, which may or may be impacting your business immediately or in the long term. And we'll be going to detail about import and export in the UK and where the Trump tariffs could be potentially impacting your business or your construction company. We'll be talking about recruitment across the whole business. We run obviously a multitude, 5 businesses, and we've recruited in every single one of them. And we'll be going into what we're doing at the moment from a recruitment perspective. I'll actually be sharing a friend of mine who was on the ground up this morning, shared a cool tip for recruitment. And we'll be talking more about recruitment stuff. We'll be going into geo-tagged photos and what they are and why they're useful to you, or the opposite, not that useful for you. And Ben's bane of his life, which is building control sign-off on Thame, the nuances Ben's been going through and the team's been going through to get that signed off, and potentially why listening to this episode could save you a lot of money by following a process for building control sign-off. We'll be talking about Maple Rise, our scheme in North London, Colney Hatch Lane, and where the sales are at on that. We'll be talking about wealth dynamics profiling. Ben and I did that assessment when we met as business partners, and we're planning to do it again to see if we've changed or grown. But we'll be talking about wealth dynamic profiling or psychometric testing is good for your business and your team, kind of back to the recruitment process. And then we kind of slipped in last week the completion on the bank, which we kind of forgot about, which we've now remembered. But yeah, we bought the bank on last week on, I believe it was crack early Friday morning. And we'll be talking about that bank, and then we'll be going into Q&A. I think we've already got a question or a comment in, which is good. Excellent. Oh, Laura, the other half is fed up with building control.
Come on, building control. Yeah, we'll find out later if it's good news or bad news.
Yeah, whether you have a happy Ben or not a happy Ben over the weekend.
Exactly. Do I get to enjoy my weekend or not? Do I get to cry?
No, I was getting at, does Laura get to enjoy her weekend?
No. Cool. So on to point number 1. When do I need to register a lease? And this has arisen because in our social housing portfolio, we have recently been going through registering some leases. We've got commercial tenants that have just signed long leases with us. So there's a process that they might need to go through. So for those that don't know, when you set up a leasehold property or you create a lease incumbent on a commercial space, for example, your new tenant will be signing that lease, and if it's over a certain time frame, they will have to register it with HMLR, which is Her Majesty's Land Registry. So just to give the answer away as quickly as possible, it's more than 7 years. So if you are signing up a commercial tenant on a 15-year lease, for example, that is more than 7 years, and therefore that lease should therefore be registered with Land Registry. So the reason this has been prevalent this week is that we are now a year into the process with our social housing provider for our social portfolio in South London. And it turns out that a couple of the leases that they've signed, which are 10 and 25-year leases, haven't been registered. They haven't registered their leases like they should be doing. There is an obligation on the lessee to register the lease, and they haven't. And it's causing us a few issues because we are struggling to refinance. This is the final thing now, nailing the coffin to get our refinance over the line. So lastminute.com, solicitor has raised the query around why the tenants' leases have not been registered. So basically, this is the main one. Over 7 years, even if the lease takes effect in the future, i.e., if the lease is for 7+ years, but it takes effect 3+ months after the date is granted, it still needs registering. Any assignment of an unregistered lease means that the lease needs to be registered, and ultimately it creates a legal interest in the property. So for somebody that is leasing the property for over 7 years, the HMLR want to know. They want to know who's going to be in that place for that amount of time period. Provides proof of ownership and priority against other interests, and basically it makes it easier to sell, assign, or mortgage the lease later. And as I've just mentioned, from a mortgage perspective, it's really holding us up. You use a AP1 form via HMLR, and you'll need the original lease, a plan of the property, and you pay a registration fee based on the lease premium or rent. One of the things that I found interesting is that some leases are still active from the 1700s, which is ridiculous. So a lot of
I can name one of those. Can you name one of them?
You bought one, have you?
No.
How old is the lease in your Abingdon place? I thought that was from the 1700s.
No, the property is from the 1400s, but not the lease. We own the freehold, so no leasees around here. I was going to name one of the leases that is around since the 1700s, actually. Yeah, one of my favourite quiz topics. Arthur Guinness and the Guinness factory in Dublin.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's a 1,000-year lease that he set up in literally probably just early 1700s.
And they pay what is it, 140 quid a year or something stupid?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. They get water for free, peppercorn rent. It's the best lease ever negotiated in the world. That is the best lease ever.
Best lease ever. Short-term leases under 7 years generally do not need registration. And the other key thing that we have come unstuck with, or not unstuck with, it's for the lessee again to kind of do this process. But ultimately, speaking for our social housing portfolio, we could have registered their lease on their behalf, and we don't need their approval to do so. But with registering a lease, there's also the potential implications of stamp duty, SDLT. So if the and to accompany the lease, you need to submit a SDLT form, and you need the lessee's agreement or approval to submit the SDLT form on their behalf. So we can register the lease on their behalf, but ultimately there's also an SDLT form that needs to be submitted, which you can't do without getting the approval. An SDLT is basically, it takes the rental income over the time frame. So let's say you've got a 10-year lease, and it's a 20 grand a year income on that lease. 10 times 20 is £200,000. So effectively, £200,000 is less than the £250,000 threshold for residential SDLT. Therefore, it's nil rate. So there is zero SDLT to pay. So there's a few. I
was just going to say, an easy way to remember that it's the tenant's responsibility is the way to envisage it is when a lease comes together, it's normally for the tenant's interest. So it's believed that the tenant is the person benefiting from that. They're setting up a new business, opening up a new branch, whatever you want to call it. And that, even though landlord is getting the benefit of recurring income normally, that is a good way to remember that it is their responsibility.
Nice. And I have a fun fact for SDLT, which SDLT has existed in one form or another since 1694, originally to fund war against France. There you go. Thanks, ChatGPT. Cool. Point number 2. So I've been back and forth today speaking with a couple of people about renewable technology. We have got 2 properties in the old Maltings, which we are about to construct. So 2 new build houses, if you've been following the old Maltings. We've got 21 flats, which is the conversion in the main building. And then in December, we got planning approval to construct 2 new houses, like townhouses in the car park. And this day and age, when you're building new build houses, you have to have some form of renewable technology. You have to have quite high energy efficiency ratings, lots of thermal insulation, low air permeability, things like that. But to do that, typically the sort of baseline model would be to use something like an air source heat pump, so it's fully electric as the house, an air source heat pump, and maybe some solar panels on the roof. So I've been discussing other ways in which we could achieve the same levels of EPC, but reduce the costs or introduce different technologies. And the conversation that I had this morning was about infrared, which I thought was quite interesting. And this image on the bottom right-hand side, for those that are viewing on YouTube, shows the difference between sort of typical convection heaters. So you've got a radiator on the wall that's radiating hot heat, and that hot air rises, hits the window, cools down, and then circulates around the room like that. So the hot air rises and then drops down and cools down, and then it goes around that cycle. Whereas infrared, basically, it heats objects. So all you're doing is putting an infrared panel on the wall or the ceiling or the floor, and all the objects within that room and you yourself will feel that infrared radiant heat effectively. And the best way I've had this explained to me of how living in a property with infrared heaters is it's like you're walking down the street on one side of the road in the shade of the buildings, and as soon as you cross the road into the sunshine, that is the type of radiant heat that you would feel within your property. So nothing would be hot to the touch as such. The infrared rays are effectively heating your body, heating thermal masses, and that's how the property, you and the property, gets warm. The benefit of this is that the actual temperature in the place stays very, very consistent. There's no hot and cold sort of really distinct drops in terms of conventional heating, and there's very, very low mold and condensation risk when you're doing infrared heating, which for rental properties, for example, which these 2 will be in terms of HMOs, has a massive longevity benefit to us as the landlord, because you're not having to deal with any potential risks of condensation and mold growth and dealing with unhappy tenants and going in and cleaning things. So that's a real massive benefit of infrared heating. I'd love to know if anyone has installed this type of thing who's tuning in. I did install this in one of Rod's projects, actually, Jack, in his scheme in Southwest London, block of 4 flats. Installed infrared heating, and I asked him, how have the tenants found it? And he said, basically, I've not heard from any of them, so I'm assuming it's fine, which is probably as good a feedback as you need, really. If everyone's complaining, saying it doesn't work, I'm always cold, or have loads of issues with it, then obviously it's not really the type of system you want to be installing. But fundamentally, everyone that's lived there has no negative feedback around it, so they must be getting on okay with it. One of the other things that you can do to stop mold growth and condensation buildup is to use something like this. This is another product that I found, somebody mentioned to me the other day. Effectively, this is a mechanical ventilation and heat recovery unit, but it's a standalone one. So you see a lot of big systems where it's got a big box, loads of ducting running around to each wet room, and loads of ducting running around to each bedroom and kitchen, etc., all like a centralized system. Whereas this is basically a decentralized heat and ventilation recovery system. So you can just stick one of these in a bedroom, and it would constantly be running in the background, bringing in fresh air that's warmed up through the process, taking out stale air, and stopping mold growth and condensation. So this is the sort of thing that the building regulations are trying to push you towards to basically reduce the amount of mold and condensation buildup. One of the other things that we're looking at in the townhouses at the old Maltings is this type of hot water system. Where this hot water system differs from your typical megaflow system is that the jacket around the how it's built effectively is a vacuum system. So instead of it being like just a thick foam insulation that's sort of stopping the heat getting out of the hot water, the casing is made with a vacuum system, which for those that don't know, effectively is a way better thermal has way better thermal efficiencies than just like a foam or an insulation that's sort of rigid insulation, for example. So yeah, it's very, very low heat loss, keeps your hot water hotter for longer, and therefore requires less energy to keep it at the temperature it needs to. So slightly more expensive than the Megaflow system, but over the long-term operational costs of the property, well worth looking at. Then we're looking at PVs, so solar panel basically. So the idea would be that this whole the whole system within the oil maltings would be infrared heaters throughout the property. Hot water would be provided by this direct electric heating hot water system, which would provide hot water to your showers and your taps. And then all of the electricity, well, not all of the electricity, but most of the electricity will be generated from the PVs on the roof, which will help you heat your water during the day when it's cheap to run, and also provide electricity for your infrared heaters as well. If you find that you're generating more electricity and you're selling most of it back to the grid, which is very inefficient, you can then look at installing battery packs to basically store that energy that you're creating during the day with the solar panels. But then you can also set yourself on a tariff whereby you buy cheaper overnight. So let's say you're normally spending 24p per kilowatt during the day on electricity, but you're buying it at 6p overnight, like the Octopus Go rates for electrical vehicle charging. You can basically buy energy at 6p and then use it during the day because you're storing it up in the battery. So it's a very, very efficient way of keeping your house going from an electrical perspective. So yeah, these are new technologies that we're looking at. I'm actually sort of waiting for a price now to look at the infrared system and the OSO hot water tank system and see how it compares, because ultimately using an air source heat pump, you're probably spending 11 grand installing the air source heat pump system. If this infrared system can come in a lot cheaper than that, then why wouldn't we look at it? It has lots of benefits, like I mentioned, in terms of the condensation and the mold growth and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'll feed back once I get costs.
Just going to add also on that Prana system that you've got there, which is a heat recovery. Well, it's a heating and heat recovery ventilation system. So we fit 6 similar ones, and they're only 200 quid. We fit heat recovery ventilators in our HMOs, so it gets rid of all the moisture. But you can also buy whole systems that go in communal areas. So in Wallingford, the 7-bed that we've just created, rather than fitting one of those in every room, we fit one in the loft on the top hallway. So all the moisture rises up through the hallway and it extracts that and keeps all the heat in. And most of them can actually run for about 15 quid a year in cost of electricity, and keep in 96% of the heat, which is obviously a concern with a bathroom extract, which will just take the hot air out and create a draft.
The way that building regulations are now sort of tightening up on part F, which is ventilation, you're going to have to start looking at this type of thing a lot more. But they are super efficient. I mean, this is actually really expensive. This is 600 quid for this one. So yeah, there are other alternative options available to you, but worth talking about. Cool. If you found that valuable, great. If you're in the space, if you like sustainability, if you have to understand these things going forward because the government are pushing it on you more and more and more. So if you do get value from this, let us know. Please rate us on Spotify. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you can do one thing for us, that would be just to share it with one person that you think would get value from it. So thank you very much for listening. Cool. Trump tariffs. This one's definitely over to you.
So I actually attended a webinar run by Goldman Sachs. Shout out to Goldman Sachs. I'm now part of the alumni, so I still get benefits to webinars and various things. Actually pretty cool. Trump tariffs have only been out for a few days, and they pulled together a webinar for everyone to talk about it, and hopefully today I want to share some of that value that we talked about on the webinar. And essentially the majority what needs to be thought through on the tax is the US do not charge import and export tax by product crossing the border. So what that means is if you freight I've actually bought stuff from China, for an example, and when it lands in the UK, there is a import tax to pay to the UK government to bring that in from China. That is a taxation that China have to sustain. The reverse of the US is there's no taxes, so there's no tax to bring product into the US. So what Donald Trump is proposing is he's going to match the taxation in the retrospective place. So he's just picking a taxation charge for the other location that have already presented that charge, which has been deemed like the fair tax rate, which is kind of fair. You kind of get this fair. Evidently, there's been a little bit of handbag throwing between China and America, and that's why we're seeing that it's racking up to 125%. I think that's going to be one of two things: just a bit of hearsay and going to fizzle out, or alternatively World War III. The only way to tell that is that for time. So the people that it typically impacts is people that are importing goods. Not services. If you're selling services in another country, you shouldn't be impacted directly. Obviously, it's really difficult to cover this topic because there's direct impact, i.e., I run a construction business, and it doesn't really change what I do day to day. But the indirect impact is a steel company might import steel from the US to the UK, and their taxation has changed. Therefore, I indirectly impact. So there's some direct impacts and there's some indirect. I'll try and keep this construction and property development related because that's predominantly our followers and potentially business. But I would recommend that if you are a business owner and you're selling product in the US, you need to be speaking to other people that are doing the same thing, and you need to be getting upskilling on this because it will drastically change your position. As far as the industry that we're mostly probably concerned about from this part is actually steel and automotive are the two main areas that they're concerned about tariffs completely changing. So if you are highly liable to need steel, so for an example, equally some builds, a lot of our construction work is not with structural steels, whereas if you're a prefabricated building where you build big structural steel frames, that might have a huge impact on your build cost. So I've definitely put a contingency in there for steel costs to go up. Equally, I think that there's value in other countries taking advantage of this tariffs to the US because it's only relevant to the US in and out. Therefore, other locations can now technically trade at a lower cost elsewhere because there might not be the tariffs to make the same profit margins. There's a little bit of free market movement that we might see. But it's still early days. We're not entirely sure what sort of impact this will have on us indirectly in the property and construction industry. Obviously, there's also the impact of confidence and the market confidence and how people act in a free market. That is a concern. I was only speaking to a commercial estate agent earlier today, and he sort of said, people are a little bit worried about this, that, and the other. It just slows the market, which is a bit of a shame. But I thought it'd be worthwhile to outline some stats on the UK. So I did a search. So it was in 2023, the UK imported approximately 22 billion pounds worth of construction materials while exporting only 8 billion. So almost 2.5 times we bringing against what we produce, which is a deficit of about 14 billion within this sector. This indicates to significant proportion of construction materials abroad. And I'm going to list off the 5 places that we bring in those materials. So 22 billion is the total. The highest rank is China, 4.5 billion, which is 20% of our total imports come from China. 2 is Germany, 2 billion. Italy is next with 1.3 billion. Spain is 4th with 1.2 billion. And Turkey is just over £1 billion. Out of all these 5 countries, that's 45%. So we're not actually weighted hugely on the US in construction. That was a simple ChatGPT search. So if you are in another business, whatever it may be, commodities, health and beauty, service-based, whatever it may be, you can do a search and actually look at your exposure for US trading. But the way that I see this is if we're already 20% reliant on China on our current import, then actually that might actually make our costs the same because they will probably prefer to trade with us now because there's no tariff involved, subject to obviously paying more. So I just thought that would be useful to share. I then also actually looked at the sort of the main construction materials that we export, because I thought it would be interesting to see how much of that goes abroad. And it's electrical wires, paints and varnishes, lamp fittings, air conditioning units, and floor coverings, believe it or not. And the top 5 markets we export to are, first, Ireland, 1.5 million. Second is United States. So we export about £1 million worth. Sorry, is that a million? Might be billion. I think it's a million. £1 million. Sorry, no, it is a million. Billion. 1.5 billion pounds worth of stock to Ireland and £1 billion worth of stock to the States. So that £1 billion worth of production for UK-based suppliers will probably now be trying to source their clients more locally. So something to consider, which may change how we do things, because a lot of the US builds obviously a lot more than us, and if there's taxation on that, then that will have a relative impact. That's pretty much it I had from the tariffs. Keen to hear anyone else's comments or feedback. Go easy, otherwise the wife will dive in and defend the US.
Nice. I mean, I've got to say, I sort of handed that over to Jack because I haven't even looked at the news over the last week or so enough to have a real opinion and see what's going on. Head down. There's been lots of stuff happening, which we'll come on to, but haven't had a moment to breathe and look at this type of stuff. So yeah, that's why Jack took it. But on to point number 4, which is recruitment. So I thought it'd be worth sharing. Obviously, we speak about the ecosystem of businesses that we run quite a lot. There's lots of moving parts. There's about 30 people in the ecosystem across the businesses. And so there's people in and out of the doors relatively regularly. And we've grown pretty fast in a number of those businesses. So we're looking to recruit more people. So I just thought I'd give a list of the people that we're looking to recruit in various businesses, in the hope that somebody listening to this might apply. Somebody listening to this might share it with someone that they know who would be interested in maybe working with us. We get really great feedback. We do net promoter scores with our companies to understand how we're doing as a company, how we're doing as business owners, really, in terms of the culture that we're creating, and whether or not people actually would recommend working for us. And thankfully, I'm happy to say that generally we get a score of over 8, which is a promoter of the business, which is absolutely amazing. So just running through a few things. Or architecture, we're looking for a senior architect, senior interior designer. Really want somebody to grab the interior design part of the business by the proverbials and try and take things forward in that regard. So historically, about only really probably 5% of our revenue comes from sort of pure interior design services. And I'd really love to get that to 15, 20% over the next couple of years. So yeah, want somebody with who's been in the industry for a while. Good connections that can bolt straight into the business, good connections with developers, good relationships with various networks around London for the sort of luxury property scene, and that can help grow the department and do some amazing work. We've got XP surveys where we're looking for a CAD technician, so somebody that is competent using AutoCAD. If they have got Revit experience, then great, but also is interested in surveying, so interested in laser scanning equipment, getting out on the road, visiting various different buildings, taking the scan equipment with them and scanning the properties and reverting back and post-processing and doing all of that good stuff. So if you know anyone with an architectural background or somebody that does have a lot of experience with AutoCAD, that would be amazing. Jack, I think you're in the lookout for someone from a sort of project admin perspective in CSL.
Yeah, exactly that. And anyone with either learnings or theory in sort of project management, building surveying, that type of thing. Every time I meet someone from building control, I'm always like, I should probably ask them if they want a job, so that they can come to what I would call the non-dark side, because building control would be the bane of my life. But anyway, so yeah, someone in project delivery, project management. We've essentially just got so many projects on in Central Suites that we need certainly support to help run the projects, and that's procuring, that's instructing contractors, managing contractors, doing a bit of technical planning, building control, fire, all of that sort of good stuff to get a house from A to B. So it's not necessarily developments.
Nice. And the other one is in XP Property. So we've got, I'm sure we'll be talking about it over the next couple of weeks, but we've got a couple of projects that we've had accepted in terms of offers, which is exciting. Obviously, we got the bank over the line last Friday, but we're always looking to pipeline for the future. Some of those are fairly sizable projects, and we've spoken about numerous times never setting up a construction company, and I still have no interest in setting up a construction company. But there are some of those projects whereby contract managing the various packages, I think, would make sense for us. So I am looking to speak to some quantity surveyors or contracts managers to potentially help move forward a relatively sizable scheme in sort of central London. So yeah, if you're a QS or a contracts manager, we'd love to have a chat with you. Do drop your CVs and covering email to info@xpproperty.co.uk. Have I missed any? Who else are we recruiting for?
We have missed one. So we are also in the market for someone to help on the acquisition side in XP Property. So if you would like to work on the front end side of things, so that's finding sites, getting them negotiated and over the line, hit us up. I think that's it.
Nice.
Yeah, and in an ideal world, if there's anyone there that wants to replace me and Ben, I'd take that up for a week or so.
Zero pay, loads of hours, lots of stress. Sounds great, right? If you
actually had a successful subscriber on this, didn't we?
We did. We've had at least one referral take up. The guys from Thistle Rock Property. Thanks very much for using this referral code. So we tout about Xero all the time in terms of keeping good bookkeeping, accounts, and financial management in your business. And we have a referral bonus code which gets you 90% off for 6 months using the code in the description down below. So you could also use the bit.ly link on the screen, but there will be a link in the description for you to use as well. So yeah, if you're a new business, as you grow, you need this type of thing to make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row from a financial perspective. So get your referral code down below. Do you want to take this one?
Sure thing. Let's do it. So interestingly, this was actually, I feel like we might be blacklisted from talking about building control by our listeners because we talk about it a lot. But basically, a geotag, to define a geotagged photo, it's where your GPS on whatever device you're taking on the photo on tracks its location. It's kind of like a, I can't remember the word now. What's it when you do a web link that locates it as well? Anyway, it tags that location where you take the photo. Where this is becoming more prevalent and useful is actually for building control, improving the concept of what's being done. You may notice that some building controls are happy to see photos of certain things that have been done at certain times that are then time bound. But now I'm starting to see it become more and more common for it to be geotagged. So there's a number of reasons that I will mention this, because sometimes some people take photos of other sites and that might get caught up in a situation. So I would definitely recommend that you get dialed down on actually only taking photos at the location where you should be taking locations. But also we've had it where essentially one of our projects in Central Suites, we re-roofed the house. We didn't necessarily get building control sign off because the roof was really tired and we just thought we'd re-roof it. We coincidentally insulated the ceiling void in the roof. So we've done the right thing to new regulations. I didn't manage to get a photo before it was all boarded and closed up because I just didn't go to site for a few days. And building control wouldn't sign it off because they didn't see that evidence either. So we either had to make a hole in a ceiling or have photo evidence. Obviously, I contacted the builder. He didn't have any photos. I then contacted the roofer, and fortunately, he did have photos. Now, the problem with his photos is he probably had like one of those Motorola Razors still, and he isn't very technically gifted, and that's why he's on roofs. But he didn't have it geotagged, and it became an absolute nightmare. And I was like to the builder control, I was like, if you look at the photo and then look at what's behind it, I can't replicate that landscape. It's other houses. That house there is really obviously that house there. And we managed to finally thumb that one through. But an evidence of you definitely need to get geotagged on the radar. And I actually find it really useful for like social media sharing on our projects as well, because on the iPhone, you can go into a location and look at all the photos that you've taken in that location. So yeah, it's just becoming more of a thing, and building control like to see it. Equally, if you're delisting a building, it might be a good idea to make sure they're geo-tagged photos for evidence as well. Just another bit of tech we got to think about.
There you go. Top tips. Cool. If you like top tips like that and want to get more sort of one-to-one mentoring with Jack or I, if you've got specific needs within your business that you want to unlock, or you want the experience and know-how and knowledge that we've gained over the last sort of 15 years in the industry, please do get in touch. We offer various packages, and if you tuned in last week or the week before, we're offering now a 12-month sort of mentorship program in conjunction with Property Ed, which has just recently kicked off. So hopefully there'll be a link in the description to get more information about that as well. But if you want to start and scale your property development business, then that is for you. So have building control signed off St Andrew's Court, Thame?
Drum roll.
The answer is, checking my emails now, no, they haven't. No. And they've also just pissed me off even more because they've got back to me on a fire door certificate that I've submitted that is apparently expired in January 2022. So, yeah, I downloaded it direct from Howden's website and it is out of date. So I have now just messaged Howden's to try and get my hands on an up-to-date fire certificate. So, yes, there's that, which is now another issue that has just arisen late in the day. We've got back to them. They were basically sticking on 2 points regarding the fire. One was the use of automatic high pressure auto mist systems. You can see them in this image actually on the wall on the right hand side here where my thingy is. They've got one there, one up on the mez level, and then one when the mez, near the door here, facing the dining space. So essentially, if there is a fire in that top level, the auto mist detects the fire and sprays high pressure mist to douse and quell the fire. That is a new word I used yesterday. Found out yesterday. Quell.
I love
fire.
I love a quell's egg.
Solid name. Different one. So yes, no, it hasn't been approved. We've also got the CFD modelling, which I think I went through a couple of weeks ago, which basically shows that the enlargement of the rear windows won't impact the neighbouring building if there is a fire in our building. So basically what they were trying to do is prove that it's part B for fire spread. Basically, any fire that comes out of our building doesn't set alight to the neighbouring building. That's what we're trying to prove. The CFD modelling proved that, hands down. Yet the fire engineer at the council, at the building inspector company, still came back and said, "Well, what happens? You've made no reference in your strategy around the tolerance of the fire at head height on skin." Well, I'm not really sure what that's got to do with the spread of fire between buildings, but these are the types of things that we're having to squash. So yes, unfortunately, building control have not signed off Thame as of yet, and we've got until Monday to kind of get those responses and get an approval. So stressful weekend, but these are the things we need to do for being a property developer. Cool. On to more fun stuff. Sales updates from Maple Rise. I was on site last week. Progression is really moving forward now. The basement has fully been cast, which is awesome. The top floor is really progressing well from a penthouse perspective. We've got first fixed electrics and plumbing going in. We're starting to board up things. Sanitary ware first fix has gone in. We're really sort of really motoring now, which is awesome to see. So I'm now having conversations with the sales agent. It's a company called Me Homes. I should probably added the logo on the screen, but a guy called Nick, very knowledgeable in the North London area, and we met on site Monday to do some digital footage. Brought a videographer along. We talked about the neighborhood, the area, why N10, why we decided to do this development in this area, why we went for flats as opposed to houses. Lots of good stuff. And I think it's the modern day way of selling properties. The digital footprint is obviously very important to capture now. People's engagement, and one of the things that I loved about Nick and what he did with his business is he was very on top of that. He does share a lot of content. He's got a good network, so we're trying to tap into that very early on as we do sort of a soft launch of the building, of the sales, and get some early traction. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that social media is incredibly powerful, and telling people what you do and sharing things across different platforms. It proved numerous times the impact of doing that and good things and opportunities that come from it. I posted about this project. I was on site on Monday. I think it was actually resharing one of Aura's posts, and somebody got in contact with me to say, my family, extended family, effectively lives a couple of streets down. They're looking to downsize. They'd be interested in looking at the penthouse. That penthouse is going to launch to the market about £1.1 million. And if we can, get that agreed early on, before it's even finished, by without even launching it to the market, then absolutely amazing if we can get that done. So the power of sharing what you're doing is it just goes so far. You never know what's going to happen when you do that, and good stuff can come from it. So we're about 3 months away now from finish. So end of July is the PC date. We're hoping to get the sales suite. So we're doing one of the ground floor 2-bed flats with the garden terraces as our show suite. So that's going to be brought forward hopefully a month in the program, and we can get that show furniture in and make that looking all amazing. Do a soft launch to build some interest for the open day, which we'll have in the show flat, before then kind of removing it from the market to sort of run that process, and then launching it back with a full suite of photos of the finished article. So the soft launch will just be with the CGIs, and then the full launch will then be once everything's staged and looking great and more finished later down the line. So piquing interest, getting people through the door, hopefully drumming up a few sales early as part of that open day, and seeing where we go from there. Cool. And then, Tuesday, I had the pleasure of being at the monthly Property Entrepreneur course that I've joined, run by Dan Hill, head trainer Adam Goff, and Josh Keegan. Really good day, actually. I really enjoyed it. Some of it's quite fluffy. Some of it I don't necessarily think is that they go through the winter, summer, what's it called? Go through
the seasons.
Winter. That's the one. You have your winter, you have your autumn. We've just jumped into spring, so we're looking at recruitment, ready for a busy summer of sales and all this sort of stuff. Doesn't really work in all of our businesses. Our businesses don't really stop and allow you to necessarily do that. But either way, it was a great day. But one of the things that it reminded me of was the wealth dynamics profiling. And Jack and I very early on did this, probably like 7-8 years ago for me. I'd be interested to know actually what people think we are based on this. You've got dynamos, blaze, tempo, steel. And just to give you a quick insight, this is very much like disc profiling, but it's more catered towards, I would say, kind of entrepreneurs. And it's called the wealth dynamics profiling by Roger Hamilton. They're sort of Genius University, I guess what it is. But ultimately, you've got the greens, which are dynamos. They are more kind of creatives. They like looking at things and learning by seeing. You've got the blaze, who are extroverted. They like getting out there. They're great for sales. Then you've got the tempos, which are more about kind of process-driven people. So project managers, tempos make great project managers because they have a system, they follow it, they just get things done. And then you've got the steels, which are more like your accountants, your finance team, are all busy in the detail and quite introverted. Going to a networking event, the steels are going to be like, nope, thank you very much, see you later. Whereas your blazers are going to go in there and they're going to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you, and they're going to get loads of energy from being in that room. Whereas the opposite of that is the steel, who don't really want to be networking at all, just want to sit in front of their computer and look at details and spreadsheets and things like that. So there's loads more obviously behind that, but I wanted to bring it up because I think it's a really great way, if you are a business owner and you are going through the recruitment process, to understand the team that you're bringing on board. Now, disc profiling, like I say, is another way of doing it, and that's, I'd say, a little bit more corporate. The wealth dynamics will give a sort of different type of outlook. But if you're running a business, when you start, you kind of need to be what's known as like a Swiss Army knife, where you're kind of like a bit of everything, but you're not really specialist or sort of one way or the other. But as you grow as a business, if you're a dynamo and you're out there creating things and you're not very good at finishing things, which is like what a dynamo would be, you're great at starting business. You'll be great in a startup environment, but then as you grow, you need people like of a steel profile that's just going to be all about the detail. You might be going out there, getting sales, meeting people, making relationships, but then you need somebody in the background that's got their eye on the finances and making sure that you're not spending loads of money. And that you need as you grow as a business, you need a bit of everything within that business. So if you are employing for a project manager, and they come out as a dynamo, that's probably not the best project manager for you, because that they're quite good at starting things, but they get quite bored quite quickly, need a bit of variety, aren't likely to finish the job and keep to rhythm, keep to program. Whereas your tempos will be absolutely brilliant coming in as a PM role, because that's all they know. They don't have the creativity. They just want to get in, do their job, roll their sleeves up, follow a process, and get to the end and get it done and move on to the next one. So yeah. That's a little bit about the wealth dynamics test.
Do you remember we compared our results to? So it's 4.5 years ago. No, sorry, 5.5 years ago we did the test, and we did it again last summer.
Did we do it again?
Yeah, we did it again. Yours is on the drive. Anyway, I can sort of share my movements. So my original profile was creator, star mechanic. Okay, so I'm very, very dynamo. Typically, business owners are dynamo. They're running around, visionaries, got the ideas, and the mechanic is like, know the numbers and the nitty-gritties, can get into that, and the star is the profile raising. I actually shifted from the star side completely over to steel. So I'm now a heavier weighing in Lord and mechanic, and I'm less of a blaze and a star. So I'm still high creator, still high mechanic, still high Lord. So my now main three profiles are primary mechanic, creator, Lord, and my three profiles.
Nice. I've got mine up, actually.
Mine indents around supporter.
You can't see that any at all.
No.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I am still a dynamo by heart. A sort of creator star mechanic is my main profile. Creator, then secondary profile star mechanic, but still relatively kind of 20% steel, 20% tempo, 16% blaze, 44% dynamo. So yeah, quite heavily on the dynamo creative front, but still relatively well rounded, I would say, from the rest of them.
Cool. If you don't say so yourself.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well rounded.
I'm not well rounded, apparently. I'm a 4% of a blaze.
Is it?
40% steel, 44% dynamo.
Yeah. So I find that amazing, actually, that you're only 4% blaze in this latest one, because from an extroverted, getting out there, speaking to people, you're from a sales perspective, you are the sales guy. So the fact that you've come in as a 4% blaze is actually quite interesting.
Yeah, I suppose the epitome of that is I don't speak to anyone unless it's necessary to.
Fair enough. Cool. Well, I mean, we've put a link in the bio, link in the description to go and take that wealth dynamics test. It will tell you things about yourself that will probably be like, oh yeah, that's why I probably do that, or that's that is right, yeah. And it's just quite insightful. And if you are recruiting, we've done disc profiling and aura for people that have been shortlisted down to the final two, to allow us to make better decisions, because people can come across differently in an interview than maybe how they perform longer term. So to understand really what makes people tick by doing these wealth dynamics tests or disc profiling, it gives you an insight into what you need as a business and whether or not this person is a good fit. So take the test.
Completion on the bank.
Some good news. Woo! Pop the champagne. I mean, it's so funny, isn't it? Like, we got to the end of we completed on this last Friday, and we got to the end of our live last Friday afternoon, and we're like, oh, we should probably mention the bank. Like, we just bought a bank. Like, it's our next project. Yeah, it's sort of.
I mean, to be fair, my main like getting stuff done is the exchange time. Like that's like when real pressure's on.
When pressure's
kind
off.
of pressure's off. I mean, if you do things properly, we've been in situations where we have had to hustle quite a bit to get things complete. Yeah. If you do things correctly, everything's in place from exchange, because you shouldn't exchange unless you've got the completion funds in place and you know where that's coming from. So, yeah, because it was fairly stress-free between exchange completion, because this was delayed completion of 3 months. Yeah, we kind of like we forgot about it, didn't we? It just happened.
Just a little baby in the corner that you forget about. Yeah. It's sometimes I feel like when you're in business, there's so much going on. Like great stuff happens like this, you complete on the bank, but it's almost like, right, what's next? Sometimes you don't take stock and sit back and are like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Good. Happy days. Yeah, we should celebrate that. We just like, right, next one. Yeah, on to the next one. What's next? Get the strip out done, move on, get the planning. But, it's exciting. It's just to give a quick overview. It's a listed building. Technically, the front part of the property is listed, which is what you see on the screen. It goes all the way back to the rear. There's a single story and a sort of 2-story element right at the back, which was probably built in I'd say probably the 70s, which has been called into the listing because it's sort of curtilage listed. So although that realistically, the rear property is butt ugly, there's no historic value in the rear part of the building, but this front part of the building is listed, and because they're all on one title and connected, it's curtilage listed, so it's all sort of wrapped up in that listing. But anyway, we're going to be turning the ground floor and the basement space around by sort of stripping out the remainder of the Halifax innards, getting that stripped out, ready for someone to take a new lease as a retail unit. We've got a few interested parties, a grocer, a restaurant, and something else. It's arranged at the moment above the Halifax as 3 2-bed flats, 2 beds on each floor. We're going to be just turning that around into 3 3-beds, which we will let as HMOs. So need listed building consent to make some of the changes. Got planning approval secured for the 3-bed HMOs. And more of a cosmetic upgrade to that section. And it's something that we hope to get turned around pretty quickly, get rent rolling, get some money in, whilst we focus on the rear of the site, which is a bit more of a development project. So the rear of the site, we're going to be turning into hopefully 4 flats. We're going to be converting the existing space into a 3-bed and a 2-bed, going up in the airspace to the rear for an extra 2-bed, and then creating a studio flat on the ground floor where some of the existing car parking spaces and plant areas are. So yeah, watch this space, a bit of a mixed bag, commercial, HMOs, development, selling some of it, holding some of it, got a bit of everything.
Well, look, we will do a deep dive on this so we can talk through how we secured it, how we funded it, how we're designing it, and actually how we're developing it. So make sure you subscribe to get notified when that comes out.
Yep, good shout. Do we have a question?
No questions. Just your wife was the only comment we had.
I mean, the wife's comment still remains. Come on, building control. God's sake. Yes, frustrating. So that means I have more stuff to do over the weekend, which is great.
Well, you know where I am. I'll be working on weekends as well.
Very true. Very true. Life of a business owner. Cool. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. If you've made it this far, amazing. Make sure you like. Don't move away until you've liked, and subscribe to the channel, because we think we give value here. We hope we do. Most people tell us we do, so we'll continue doing it. And if you're interested in working with us, drop us an email or direct message and we'll be in touch. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Enjoy the sun.
Cheers.
It's going to go away again.
Bye.